I'm a big fan of our founding fathers, a big fan of Trials and Tribulations of John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin is a big hero of mine. The topic for this discussion, leaping over leapfrogging and the quantum enterprise thesis. What do I mean by that? Right now we have, through the advancement, diligence, hard work of us in the West, we have advanced technology to a point where what we would call emerging, albeit ancient societies, are able to capitalize on technologies that we've perfected very, very quickly without having to go through an industrial age. And there could be resentment on some people's part. There could be a look to exploit these different societies. I'm looking at it from the perspective of how is it that all of this can benefit us collectively. And so my tendency is to reduce it down to the smallest indivisible level. And with this universe as we know it now, the quantum level is a pretty small level. So what is the industry of one, the least divisible industry? I'll tell you some about who I am, and then I'll conclude with who I am, because who you are, maybe it's all relative. And some people think that it's where you came from, what you know, who you know, what you have. But I'll at least give you a little bit of perspective. And then I'll complete a conversation that began 17 years ago on a question that was raised. We were about to launch a technology called Wi-Fi, and it's become somewhat commonplace today. But the question 17 years ago is this the year of wireless, and if not, when? And the microphone came to me on a panel, and I said, the year of wireless is 2008, and then I went about explaining that. So I'll bring the discussion current because it was 2008. But then I'll focus in on complexity and compatibility. There are 5 C's to the emergence, what's inhibiting pervasive computing. Computers everywhere, in my opinion. Coverage, capacity, cost, complexity, and compatibility. We're dealing with complexity now. And it's one of the taglines of our presentation here, or our session. Compatibility is the toughest one, in my opinion. And that's what I believe that we struggle with, especially with different mores, different cultures, different attitudes. And I'll shed a little bit of insight that I may have into how some of that may be being taken care of for us, a byproduct of some of our frustration and anxiety. Industry. I'll sum it up with an individual's diligence directed to a meaningful purpose, the definition, the original definition of industry. Okay, so introduction. Now, who am I? 1960s. So we were, my parents are second generation immigrants, Polish, Hungarian, Slovak. They worked in Western Pennsylvania mining. Coal mining. My father fought in the Korean War, came back from Korea, went back to the coke ovens and said, there's got to be a better way. So he picked up his bride and he went to Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio, it was as it should be. We had this explosion in our industrial sector, homes, jobs galore. And your measure was what you had. You know, who you were is what you had and where you were. Not necessarily where you were from or who your parents were anymore. And it was as it should be. 1970s, my opinion, big tug of war raging on in my youth. A tug of war in that what my parents were doing and talking about was we're as it should be, but is that where we want to be? And so they decided when they had the suburbia all figured out that they would pick it all up and they would go out into the country, into a farming community. And so we had this tug of war between suburbanites and the agrarian culture. And at the same time we had war raging on, and I was just starting to wake up and say, what in the world's going on? And I sat and I watched the Vietnam War draft lotteries. And I was very concerned that my number was going to come up. And everybody would say, well, what's your number? And I said, well, it's either 12 or 21. 12 is Roger Staubach's number, and 21 was Roberto Clemente. 80s were a beautiful thing. We're all growing up and getting ready to launch from there. And then, you leave the home, and I'm on my own with this girlfriend who has chosen to stay with me all these years. And at the time, what I was very passionate about was the automotive industry had treated us very, very well as a family. And what I was very interested in was manufacturing automation. And manufacturing automation, unfortunately, had just left. Everything moved to Asia, everything moved to Japan. Fortunately, I was able to work for a large information systems company, and they assigned me 25 years ago to a very large Japanese automotive manufacturer who was doing a $1 billion pilot in Ohio. And they said, right, wrong, or indifferent, you understand this information stuff. These people want to go ahead and build factories. We're going to assign you to them. And they said, you need to either have gray hair or no hair to be effective. I've been working on the no hair piece, but I didn't have any gray. And so the head of the office said he actually gave me a pair of glasses. He said, put some glasses on. It'll make you look younger or look older, and you'll be more credible. Unfortunately, because of gravity or whatever, I have to wear these now, although I didn't have to then. What we did, an experience that I had at that time left a lasting mark on me. And what happened was this manufacturing company said, we do not necessarily have a vision of the future. They said, we have a very good understanding of our past. So they said, Stu-san, would you please understand our past, understand where we are now, and help us to build a path to this future? And everything since that point has been me in the middle, everything down here to the lower left and up to the right. And so I had a great learning experience in helping them to understand how you can take management science from the West, apply it to diligence and scarcity from the East, and create a new generation of manufacturing information systems and manufacturing factories and jobs. And Ohio has benefited from that. That time, I went back to my dad and I said, look, current course and speed, I'll probably work for 30 years or so, and then, hopefully I'll have some children, and we'll be able to go ahead and maybe eventually have our home, and then I'll do this thing called retirement, and it seems like it takes so long to get there. And so he said, look, no one gives you a chance. There's a big difference here. Nobody gives you a chance. You have to take a chance. And he said, so take a chance, and I did. First of 6 startups. And I went down the rabbit hole. And that rabbit hole went from Ohio to Texas to California and Illinois. And I had the privilege, to meet this one individual, Chris Resendez, our host, along the way. And so over the last 15 years, we've kept in touch. So I'll go back to the C's. So that's the perspective that I have, and I'll go back to the C's. Where are we on the implementation, the availability of pervasive computing? Coverage, capacity, cost. A lot of that was addressed in 2008. 2008 was a watershed year. At that point in time, more legal than technological, breakthroughs were made that allowed technology to be available to the masses that allow you to have all of your entertainment, your edutainment, your messaging or whatever, wherever you go. And it democratized that technology, making it available to the emerging economies as well. Since that point in time, it's continued to expand, and it's continued to proliferate. And so we have all of these different acronyms, abbreviations, gobbledygook out there. Part of my role and responsibility is to take that nonsense and that jargon and turn it into something that's digestible. And so, we have 4G out there now, and then we have son of Bluetooth coming up, and then we also have wireless sensor networks and LEOs, and so you've got all of this stuff that's out there. The important thing is you've got really high capacity, and it's everywhere. And so coverage, capacity, and cost, and it's a very long conversation, but I won't go into it, but I'm comfortable that those are addressed. Complexity, it's what we're dealing with right now on the technology side. All of that gobbledygook and jargon led to a lot of great point solutions that were based upon the past. And if you're looking to the future, it's like saying, my, what a wonderful future you have behind you. And so what you need to do is say, okay, let's take a new approach. Let's create an approach that kind of untethers the way people want this stuff to work from the manner in which it's actually implemented. And so we've got good things going on right now. The maturing of the way software is developed to allow the way that people want technology to work to be untethered from the particular hardware. You've got another complexity addressing issue, simplifying the architecture. Before, you didn't have enough computing resource and storage and capacity in order to do these sorts of things. When I mentioned the watershed 2008 year, all of that technology is now flooding, and it's continuing to grow. Peter Diamandis, Raymond Kurzweil have been talking about it for well over a decade, and it's all advancing as we sit here, more than doubling every 18 months. The last piece of addressing complexity, simplifying the integration. How is it that you bring the good things of the past into the things that we want to do now and prepare for the future? And a very important step that I'm working on right now is to enable these technologies to work for you. I don't know about you, but it's been never that a computer has surprised me. I mean, maybe it's you guys have found some delight or surprise in some technology, but it's difficult to get them to exceed your expectations because you're doing a lot of the work for them instead of them working for you. So this is a focus area right now. And then you look at, what's the possibility? These information appliances. The head of information technology for the world's largest retailer threw this book at me in 1998. And he said, think this way. Overcome complexity, introduce simplicity. New technologies always spawn forth new uses that we never thought of prior. The same will be true here. Let's take a time out. Talking about 5 C's and getting further and further into the microcosm. Do we really want to work that hard? I raised that question back in 2006. I was driving on a freeway. It was 12 lanes at the merge in Southern California, and a colleague of mine were talking about intelligent transportation systems. And at that time in San Diego County, we were trying to decide whether or not we were going to expand 12 lanes to 16 or 20. Okay, it's now 18. And so we're driving down there, and I said, tell me about these intelligent transportation systems. What are they supposed to do? He said, well, for example, Stu, I'll be able to have a truck driver, and he's going to be driving that over-the-road truck down the road, and he'll have 9 other trucks following him, flying in formation. And I said to him, it sounds like a train. So, do we really want to work that hard? It's very easy to look down market. Look to the economies and the regions who have not yet made the investment in the infrastructure and allow them to skip over the industrial age or allow them to skip over all of the infrastructure that we've ripped and replaced and so on and allow them to go to subsistence and then beyond. These emerging economies are leapfrogging the West. And if you provide them these information appliances today, the thing that's important, I think, to note is, what do they do with them? Some of the first things that they do are subsistence. Where's my medicine? Where are my disease centers? Education, weather. Where are the best fishing zones? Where are the best fishing markets? One thing that they're teetering on right now is entrepreneurship. You say, okay, they're building businesses. And the first entrepreneuring effort in some of these sub-Saharan African communities are actually just perpetuating the utility of communication itself. What can you do with the technologies in a leapfrogging context? Ecologically, responsibly invest in infrastructure that is needed to advance the quality of human life. Hold on. What's that mean for us in the West? Is this the prequel for how the West was lost? Will the West have pioneered the industrial age and now be saddled with legacy infrastructure, skyrocketing debt, and an aging workforce? Not necessarily. Let me get back to working through the 5 C's. While we've been struggling and fighting and pushing harder, and we talk about the baby boomers moving, into their retirement years. While we've been doing that, life has been going on. And what we find is that our progeny in the United States, private as well as public schools, has a larger generation of populace in school now and preparing to enter a workforce. And we all agonize over, I've got an aging population that can't retire, what jobs will be available? Let's look a little closer. Look at the millennials. Self-reliant and responsible with new expectations. If we look at that, the largest population of school-aged children in the history of our great nation, unfortunately, or fortunately, the majority of them, dating back to 1986, have been self-reliant, having to take care of responsibilities, fill roles that had historically been taken on by a stay-at-home parent. At the same time, we all look at technology and we say, what were they doing, when they're not doing the chores? The period of time when this happened, when these millennials were introduced into the latchkey programs, we had the introduction of gaming systems. And I bought every gaming system that was ever made for my sons, mainly because I used them kind of as experiments. But also, unfortunately, my older son was born in 1987, and my wife was wondering, why am I bringing this Nintendo Entertainment System home when he can't even hold a pacifier? It was because I had to break it in for him. So while this generation was becoming more self-reliant and more responsible, they were being introduced to technology. Teach your children well. What did they learn? 1986, Nintendo Entertainment Systems. The first impression that this new generation had of information technology is instant access. Turn it on and you're there. 1991, Game Boy, portable instant access, take it with you. Super Nintendo Entertainment System, collaboration. I can have my brothers or my friends enjoy instant access. Super Game Boy, hot docking, continuous access. Take it on the road with you, enjoy it at home. 1994, Virtual Boy. What does reality look like, inside that instant access environment? 95, Pocket Game Boy, more portable instant access. 1996, Nintendo 64, virtual reality and collaboration. 97, Color Game Boy, real portable instant access. And my favorite, 1998. Right around the time when Tamagotchi was starting to wind down, we had Pokemon. This introduced the concept to these young fledgling malleable minds of value. Value being something that could be stored. They can earn time, believe it or not. They can extend their play by performing well, and in their mind, they're earning time, and that time can then be quantified in Pokemon, digital cash. So what's special about this year with that generation? While we're all fighting, looking forward, waiting for the good old days, Those who were born 1982 to 2003, 5 to 10 years old, children introduced to information technology, always on, intuitive, always available, and essential to their lives, they're now 25 to 30 years old. Primary user, developers, implementers, and influencers of mobile and wireless information systems are now taking on leadership roles. Where does this leave us? Individual industry renaissance, pursuing life of making meaning, applying yourself to some diligent pursuit. Automation, information technology is mitigating the labor arbitrage. The technology is getting so tightly integrated, it doesn't make sense to ship it over the ocean, to have it assembled and shipped back. We have a world poised on the brink of environmental responsible advancement of the human experience. We have a new generation, comfortable with who they are, what they do, and hungry to make meaning. I said that I'd open up the conversation telling you a little bit about myself. What was really interesting recently, those entrepreneurs, my parents, are working longer, working more, and actually making more money now in their 80s than when they moved from the coal mining town. My sons and my wife have made extraordinary meaning, for me as I continue this pursuit, emerging from the rabbit hole. And the last point, my sons would send me Father's Day cards, and they wouldn't say thank you for this or that or the other thing. They said to me constantly, thank you for what you do. And they did it time and time again, from when they could write, thank you for what you do. And I finally asked my younger son, I said to him, look, why don't you say thank you for what you do for me? Or why don't you say thank you for who you are? Or thank you for loving me? Or thank you for what we have? He said, why is it that you always say thank you for what you do? And he said, that's who you are. And we have a whole generation of them emerging today. Thank you very much.